Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Canadian Food Focus webinar series. I'm Dorothy Long, Managing Director for Canadian Food Focus and the host of today's webinar. Canadian Food Focus is a national organization with the goal of improving food literacy of Canadians from farm gate to plate. We explore how food is grown and raised and provide useful advice from experts like dietitians, home economists, chefs, and of course, farmers to help people make confident food choices. Our educational programming for consumers provides information about Canadian farming and food through articles, videos, our monthly Great Food Grown Here newsletter, and of course, social media posts. Our website features sections for In the Kitchen, recipes, health, Canadian food stories, on the farm, what's in season, and now a Learn to Cook area. We also provide programming for food professionals, including farm tours, seminars, and webinars like this one today. We encourage you to join our forum Facebook group and newsletter to learn more about these professional development opportunities. Angela, our communications manager, will post a link in the chat so that you can see how to join those. But let's get started with today's webinar. We are pleased to offer this webinar as part of Global Biotech Week that has the goal of creating awareness and understanding of biotechnology. Today, we have Dr. Sarah Evanja, who is the Vice President of Business Development with Okanagan Specialty Fruits. This company has such an interesting story, including the development of the Arctic apple, and Sarah is here to share it. Before joining Okanagan Specialty Fruits, Sarah earned her PhD in plant biology from Cornell University, where she also served as a faculty member teaching classes on plant biotechnology. She also, during her time there, led international agriculture initiatives aimed at improving food security. She still maintains an adjunct faculty appointment in plant breeding and genetics at Cornell, but now spends her time with Okanagan Specialty Fruits. Sarah has been recognized for her efforts with the Burlag Communication Awards and the Mary Clutter Leadership in Science Public Service Award from the American Society of Plant Biologists. Welcome, Sarah, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation to join you today.
Wow, no, we're lots of the people who are joining us online are home economists and dietitians and chefs, and I think really interested in the non-browning apple, and I think we're going to get some great questions today. So I'll let you get started. If anybody does have any questions, please put them in the chat, and after Sarah's presentation, we will get to those. So take it away, Sarah.
Thank you so much. And it's so nice to be here. And I applaud all of you in the audience who are helping feed our population and ensure that everybody has access to healthy, nutritious choices. So thank you for the work that you all are doing. It's a pleasure to be here, particularly in celebration of Global Biotech Week. And I'm eager to tell you how we've been using biotechnology innovations to make healthy food more accessible, in particular in the development of the Arctic apple. I'll also say that Saturday is the International Day of Food Loss and Food Waste Awareness, in which a day in which we can sort of think about how to reduce food loss and food waste. And this is another really important aspect of the work that we're doing at Okanagan Specialty Fruits and our efforts to produce food more sustainably and reduce waste. And so I think it's just a perfect opportunity to bring these two occasions together, Global Biotech Week and this Food Loss and Food Waste Awareness Day, and tell the story of Arctic apples. So with that, I'm going to kick it off. I'll just note that my email address is here on the title slide. If anyone wants to follow up with any questions after the presentation, you can take note of it here, and I can share it again at the end. So how many of you out there have seen apples that look like this? I'm guessing all of us have seen this. Personally, I have 3 young children, and when I get their lunch boxes at the end of the day and I open them up and I see images like this, it gives me pause, right? So too many times we see apples with a few bites out of them that are unfinished. And one of our goals at Okanagan Specialty Fruits is to do away with the half-eaten apple. And I'm going to tell you about the ways in which we're doing that in the development of Arctic apples. So if we never see an apple that looks like this again, we'll have done our work. All right, so let's jump into the story. So our company, Okanagan Specialty Fruits, the developer of the Arctic apple, was founded by Neil and Louisa Carter. And Neil and Louisa had lived abroad for a number of years, building farms in less developed countries around the world. And they finally came back to British Columbia and decided to start their own farm. And in particular, they started a fruit tree orchard. And in beginning to grow their apples and other fruit tree crops, they noted that almost half of the apples were wasted all along the supply chain. And so they really became fixed on addressing this waste in apple production and to create a better, more perfect apple. And this perfect, better apple would, one, reduce food loss and food waste, and it would present the opportunity to bring apples into new places where sliced apples hadn't been able to enjoy placement previously. So that is really the driver for the development of Arctic apples. And I like to tell this story because so many times when we have access to a new technology, we go and we take the technology, let's think about it as a hammer, and we go around and we look for a nail, right? And in this case, Neil and Louisa were looking for a solution. They were looking for a solution to the food loss and food waste problem in apple production. And in looking for that solution, they discovered biotechnology. And that really is the beginning of the Arctic apple story. So just to back up, food loss and food waste in apple production happens all along the supply chain, from the orchard setting where we get bruising from picking, we call it finger bruising, through packaging and processing, the bin bruising that happens, the jostling of the apple when it's being washed and packed, and then all along to the retail environment where you have consumers that are, being picky about what apples they choose and may continue to bruise that apple until we get to our own refrigerators as consumers, where we may not be storing our apples optimally, we may over purchase and under consume, but certainly much of food waste, particularly in developed countries, is happening at the consumer end. And so the beautiful thing about our Arctic apples is it really addresses food loss and food waste all along the supply chain, from the orchard all the way to the consumer's fork, if you will. So how did we make the Arctic apples? Well, the Arctic apples are special as compared to other apples because when you slice an Arctic apple, it doesn't brown. Or when it receives a slight bruise, for example, from a finger bruise, for example, it doesn't brown. And so what we're able to do is essentially bring apple in to the market in a much more convenient format as a sliced apple, as a diced apple. We're able to slice an apple and put it in a child's lunchbox, for example, without concern that it's going to brown by the time the kid opens the lunch pail at lunchtime. So how do we do this? Well, we used biotechnology to essentially turn off the gene that causes the browning reaction. Now, if you want a really technical term today, that gene codes for an enzyme called polyphenol oxidase. And this is the enzyme that essentially creates that browning reaction in apple. And so when you turn that off, it's no longer produced and you no longer get the browning reaction that we see in a conventional apple. And so this is how we develop the Arctic apple. And it's a very, very simple science and simple application of biotechnology, but it has big impact in terms of reducing waste in apple. So what is the Arctic apple advantage? What advantage does Arctic apple have over other conventional apples? Well, as we all know from our own lives in the kitchen, typical conventional apples, when you slice them, they turn brown when they're exposed to air. And not only does this essentially create the browning reaction, but other compounds start to break down as well. Now, there are other sliced apples out there. There are other ways to ensure that an apple slice doesn't turn brown. Perhaps you've put lemon juice or lime juice on an apple to prevent it from turning brown. But other sliced apple companies can essentially soak a sliced apple in a preservative that also will help it not turn brown. But of course, soaking it in these substances tends to change the flavor. And so with Arctic apples, we're able to prevent that browning reaction while maintaining that orchard freshness. So our apples stay white and crisp, and they taste like an apple should after slicing, and not just for hours, but for days. This allows us to bring apple into more places. So we're able to create an apple that is more convenient, that is tastier, healthier, and allows us to choose a convenient snack that's healthy for us, like a sliced apple, over maybe a less healthy option like a bag of chips. I think the real impactful aspect of the Arctic apple for the entire apple industry is that it really allows us to put apples in more places. So, previously there are places where we might see other fruits and vegetables, but we really haven't been able to see apples. So you might see, for example, a sliced pepper on a salad bar, but you don't see a sliced apple because it's difficult to present an apple on a salad bar because it will brown. But in the case of Arctic apples, you can now put apples as an offering on a salad bar. You can put it on a charcuterie board. You can use it as a salad topper and not be afraid that it will brown. And of course, you can also use it in really interesting beverage applications, which you can see in the lower right here. Our juice made from Arctic apples also doesn't brown, so it creates a really beautiful, vibrant juice option. So the idea is that we can put this healthy option, one of the favorite fruits of consumers, apples, in more places and inspire the consumption of this very healthy, desirable fruit. So the Arctic apple, I think, really offers solutions to some of the challenges that many people in food service, for example, are facing. So we offer a very consistent product. It tastes the same every time, has a longer shelf life, a 28-day shelf life, as opposed to an 18 to 21-day shelf life of other sliced apples. It's a superb quality apple and grown very sustainably. I think one of the things that often gets overlooked when people think about sliced apples is, other apples are shipped around the world as a whole apple, and so you're essentially not only shipping the part that consumers will eat, but you're also shipping the core, which will never get eaten. And so in the case of sliced apples, you're essentially slicing the apple before it gets shipped, and then you aren't shipping around the part of the apple that will ultimately never be eaten. And that actually equates to 20 to 30% reduced freight weight. So it's really allows us to reduce our carbon footprint at Okanagan Specialty Fruit. So that's something we're really proud of. And then in terms of food service applications, I think, the sliced apple presents a huge savings of labor, especially if you're in a food service environment where you're serving large amounts of food in a short period of time. Having that apple already sliced allows you to really accelerate the ability to serve large numbers of people. So there's all kinds of solutions that this apple provides, particularly in the food service environment. So how do these apples show up? And what do they look like when they're purchased? So we sell Arctic apples in 3 different varieties. We have Arctic Goldens, Arctic Grannies, and Arctic Fujis. And Arctic Goldens are a yellow-skinned apple. You know Golden Delicious, and this is a Golden Delicious that has been made to be non-browning. We have Arctic Grannies as our green-skinned variety, and Arctic Fujis as a red-skinned variety. And so it's a sweeter variety. Arctic Granny is a little bit tart, goes great on a charcuterie board. And we sell our apples in 3 different sizes of bags. So we have a 2-ounce bag that's really popular with schools and K through 12 environments. put them on a lunch tray. They're great for a grab and go environment. We also sell 20-ounce and 40-ounce bags that are really perfect for food service applications or even salad bars in schools. Our apples are sold as slices, as you can see on the left here, and we also sell them as dices, which again, great for salad bars and parfaits and other applications in food service. We have a 3/4 inch dice and a 1/2 inch dice. So this is what the apples look like when they're actually out there in the world. We don't sell whole apples. Part of the benefit of our apple is that it can be sliced and already and made more convenient for consumers. So our apples aren't like other pre-sliced apples in that they have a greater shelf life, a 28-day shelf life. So they really help retailers and food service operators reduce the shrink, which is a huge issue in terms of making it a more economically viable solution. They're great for slicing. They have great quality, better flavor, and of course, less waste, which is foundational to the company's commitment to striving towards zero waste. Our apples are great for convenience store applications and other retail supermarket food service, in that they go wonderfully with a charcuterie board, a cheese tray, other fruits like grapes and melons. And so they can be repacked in a number of different formats as well. I want to take a step back for a moment and talk a little bit about Okanagan Specialty Fruits, the company that has developed the Arctic Apple and the company that I so proudly work for. So Okanagan Specialty Fruits is based in Summerland, British Columbia, and we are a fully vertically integrated fruit tree business. So we do all of the science in creating new fruit tree varieties and new Arctic apples. And we have a lab in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, where adjacent to the university, where we do all of the molecular biology and the science behind the Arctic apple. We have 1,250 acres of orchards in Washington State, and that's where all of our apples are grown. And then we store our apples at our campus in Moses Lake, where we have a state-of-the-art controlled atmosphere facility that we just opened last month. And we have a new state-of-the-art processing facility. And so this is where the apples get sliced and diced and sent out to our customers. And I think, this full vertical integration is really important in that our orchards are never more than 30 minutes away from our controlled atmosphere and our processing facility. And so our apples don't travel very far before they travel to a consumer. And this allows us, again, to reduce our carbon footprint and ensure that we're delivering a fresh, orchard fresh product to our consumers. So we can slice on demand when we get an order. We can take our apple out of controlled atmosphere, process it, and ship it out to the consumer in a really efficient, low carbon footprint manner. And then, of course, out come our premium products, our sliced and diced apples that you can see on the top right of the slide here. And we also have recently launched a cider making business. So our apples, not only do they make a great snack, but when you make juice out of our apples, it turns out it's the non-browning nature of the apple creates a beautiful fresh juice that really maintains a lot of the flavor compounds that don't break down due to the non-browning nature of the apples. And when you make hard cider out of that juice, it's a very exquisite champagne-like drinking experience. And so we launched a new line of ciders called Endless Orchard, and we received the Best New Cidery of the Year award at the Northwest Cider Cup. So we're really proud of our new cider business in addition to our Arctic apples. Okay, so I want to just take a moment to summarize a little bit about the features of Arctic apples that I'm most excited about. So again, our company was founded on a commitment to sustainability, really reducing waste of apple all along the supply chain. Due to the nature of our apple, we're really committed to doing away with the half-eaten apple, as I said in the beginning. And then finally, because we're only shipping apple slices, the part of the apple that people eat, we're able to reduce our freight weight by 20 to 30%, really reducing our carbon footprint. Now we know that in order to inspire consumers to eat more healthy foods, we have to present healthy foods that have excellent flavor, right? Flavor is king. And so we're able, through our non-browning nature of our apple, to really preserve that orchard fresh flavor in our product. And then finally, for me as again, a mom of 3 kids who's really trying to inspire lifelong healthy eating habits, it's really important for me that we can make apple a healthy, nutritious snack option more accessible for people. So, particularly in our kind of active lifestyles of always being on the run and eating on the run, this offers a snackable and packable option that's got great nutrition. So let's talk a little bit about the challenge of our diets today and access to healthy fruits and vegetables. We know that at least in the US where I live, only 1 in 10 American adults eats the recommended daily amount of fruits and vegetables. So, if there's, let's say, 10 people on this webinar today, only one of us will actually eat our recommended daily amount of fruits and vegetables. And so we all have a long way to go in improving our diet. If we look at kids in the US, 1 in 3 kids in the US do not eat a daily fruit at all. And nearly half of US kids don't eat a daily vegetable. I don't know what the data are in Canada, but my guess is they're not too terribly different. So as a result, childhood obesity is on the rise, dietary disease is on the rise. It's actually among the leading causes of death in the United States. And so we have got to continue to innovate to make healthy foods more accessible. And what we do know is that today, if we look around the supermarket aisles, only 3% of innovation is in produce. So there's a lot of innovation happening in CPG and center store products, but very little in produce. And so we're really committed to continuing to innovate in healthy fruits and vegetables to make them more desirable, more accessible, and more convenient so that consumers eat more of them. So we are celebrating Global Biotech Week this week. So I thought, let's talk a little bit more about biotechnology. And biotechnology, of course, is opening the door to all kinds of really new, exciting innovations. Some fruits and vegetables are difficult to work in. They're difficult to breed. Crops like bananas, almost impossible to breed. And biotechnology really facilitates the development of new varieties and bringing in new traits and new attributes in ways that have been difficult to do before. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is that we now can use biotechnology to innovate and bring in new traits that are really important for consumers. So biotechnology has brought us a pink pineapple with higher levels of lycopene. Lycopene is the compound that makes tomatoes red. A highly nutritious compound with lots of health benefits. And so now we can bring that compound into pineapple. We also have high anthocyanin purple tomatoes that you can see there on the top left. And again, anthocyanins are known for having great benefits to healthy hearts and healthy brains. And so we're able to now have blueberry level nutrition in the tomato, which of course we eat many more tomatoes than blueberries, and we have it in many more aspects of our diet. And so being able to boost the nutrition of tomato is a fantastic development. There are some other exciting biotechnology innovations happening in tomato. We have a high GABA, high amino acid tomato that's been developed in Japan. There's a high vitamin D tomato that has been developed in a couple of different parts of the world. And of course, we have our own product, Arctic Apples, which is a non-browning trait that makes apples more convenient, more accessible for consumers. There's other products out there that are also non-browning. There's a non-browning mushroom. There's a non-browning avocado in development, which is really exciting. And there's also a non-browning banana. So lots of traits for consumers, but also we know that consumers are so passionate about improving our food system to make it more sustainable. And so there's also traits being developed with biotechnology that make the food growing of our food much more sustainable. And so these are traits that have a grower advantage, but also an environmental benefit. Reducing water use, for example, reducing pesticide use, reducing diseases so that we don't have to use so many pesticides, and that we can continue to grow the produce that we love. And then, of course, reduced food waste in the field, reduced bin bruising, for example, finger bruising, that again, our Arctic apple helps prevent. So there's all kinds of innovations happening out there that benefit both the grower and enabling the grower to produce our food more sustainably, as well as traits that are really igniting excitement for the consumer. Now have exciting products like the pink pineapple, for example, purple tomatoes. Pink pineapples themselves have more than doubled over the last year in sales, and so they've become a very popular fruit on supermarket shelves. When it comes to the purple tomato, we know that people are really interested in trying this tomato. 80% of people interviewed were interested in trying the purple tomato, and in particular, they're interested in the innovation for its unique health benefits, that blueberry level nutrition packed into a purple tomato. So we know that when people change their minds about biotechnology and go from being sort of unsure or feeling like they don't have enough information to changing their outlook, 80% of the time that's a move from being unsure to being very positive about the technology. And so I think, consumers are increasingly understanding that biotechnology brings great benefits to agriculture and to food. We know that I think over the course of the COVID pandemic, we began to understand as consumers the role that biotechnology played in helping develop our life-saving vaccines. And so that's really was a moment where people were able to learn a little bit more about the science of biotechnology and appreciate the benefits of this technology. Okay, so today there's new technologies coming online that will continue to allow us to innovate in fruits and vegetables and improve our food system. Many of you have probably heard about CRISPR. This is a form of genome editing. The developers of CRISPR won the Nobel Prize in just a few years ago in 2020. And, this technology is really helping to improve perceptions of GMOs. So several independent studies out there have shown that, people don't know that much about CRISPR, but when they learn about the benefits, the majority feel really positive about it. And they feel positive about it, especially if the technology is being used to develop products that can bring forward personal health benefits and environmental benefits. So can we make food more nutritious? Yes, we can. We have already discussed some examples of that. And can we make food production more environmentally sustainable? And in particular, consumers are interested in reducing pesticide use and reducing water use. And I'm really proud to work for the company that's developed the Arctic apple because of course Arctic apples present both the nutrition benefit of making a healthy option more accessible, as well as sustainability benefits in reducing food loss and food waste. So it's a double win. Okay, finally, I wanted to invite you to explore some of our Arctic apple recipes. On our website, we have a number of really exciting recipes, many of which are fall inspired. So it's a perfect time to browse the site. I think as a salad lover, I'm really excited about some of the opportunities to place Arctic apples in a salad, as a salad topper, as a julienned component to a nice carrot salad with some raisins on top. We have a fantastic apple inspired pizza recipe that's really a healthy, I would call it a healthy version of pizza. And so there's a number of other recipes on the website, some sweet, some savory. I'm a savory person, so I happen to have featured some more savory recipes here, but there's a lot of really nice, particularly fall inspired sweet recipes on the website, as well as some really interesting recipes on how to use Arctic apples as a fun beverage ingredient as well. So I invite you to explore our Arctic apple recipes. And with that, I'm going to share this photo of our beautiful orchards in Washington State. Right now, we're in the middle of harvest, so it's a really exciting time to be sharing the Arctic apple story. And with that, I think we have time for some questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Dorothy and team, to see what questions we might have out there. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. That was so much interesting information and such a great story. And I know as a mom, I have dealt with my share of half-eaten apples in lunch bags coming home. But to hear more about the innovation that's happening in the produce section was really interesting as well. And yes, we do have a few questions. So one of them from Donna Lee was just simply, is the webinar going to be recorded and can I watch it again? And the answer is yes. It will be up on our YouTube channel as well as in our Canadian Food Focus Forum Facebook page as well. So the next question would be, do Arctic apples grow the same as other apples in orchards?
Absolutely. So the great thing about biotechnology is it's just a way to essentially make a new variety. And once you have that new variety, they grow just like any other apple. I'm really proud of the sustainable practices that we use in our orchards, really, minimizing inputs to maximize outputs. So we really use the latest technology in the orchard to make sure that we're growing our apples the most sustainable manners as we can. But absolutely, they grow like any other apple tree.
Well, and I was interested too when I was on your website, and I think you mentioned as well that you are using varieties that we're all familiar with, the Golden Delicious, the Fuji. Now I can't remember the other one, but are there any other varieties? The Granny Smith.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm really excited to say that we just went through all of the food safety and regulatory approvals in Canada and the US on our next apple variety. It's the Arctic Gala. And so there was an announcement just, I don't know, a couple months ago that the Canadian authorities have approved that variety. So we're really excited. We also have approval in the US. So you'll start to see the Arctic Gala out as an offering next year. We're growing them in the orchard and they'll be ready for commercial sale next season. And then in the pipeline, we have Arctic Honeys and Arctic Pinks. So this is a Arctic sized version of the Honeycrisp as well as the Crisp Pink. And so all of those are red-skinned apples and, have their own flavor profiles and different people like different apples. And that's fantastic that we have so many amazing apples to choose from. And now we'll have 6 fantastic Arctic apple varieties to choose from.
Yeah, that's great. Gala and Honeycrisp are my favorites. So that's good to see. Let's see, where are we on the questions? The question is CRISPR what was used to make the Arctic apple, or?
So the Arctic apple story started before CRISPR was invented, if you will. And so we used a technology called RNAi that essentially is a technology that you can use to turn a gene off. So you just don't get the expression of a single gene. Today, absolutely, we would use CRISPR. It just wasn't the tool that was available when the Arctic apples were developed. So now as we look to the future and think about, well, what does the future of Okanagan specialty fruits look like and how else do we want to innovate to improve our food system? We're thinking about, well, can we use CRISPR to control some of the diseases of apples? And so we're making disease-resistant apples so that we don't have to use pesticides in the treatment of apples and apple production. So that's one of the traits we're working on now, disease resistance. And in our disease resistance work, we are using CRISPR. And we're also using CRISPR to bring the non-browning trait into other fruit tree crops that we're excited about.
Oh, any of those in the pipeline, or?
So we're it's very early stages, but looking at some of the common fruit tree crops that again, yield some of our favorite nutritious fruit tree crops that we love to grow in the northwest part of Canada, as well as in the north, or I should say in the south west part of Canada, as well as the northwest part of the US.
Great. A related comment question was, GMO has developed a poor reputation. What are some of the reputable websites that you can learn more about the efficacy of CRISPR?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really great resources about CRISPR on the use. There's a institute at University of California, Berkeley called the Innovative Genomics Institute, and this institute was actually set up by one of the Nobel Prize winners who helped develop CRISPR, Jennifer Doudna, and so they've done a fantastic job of really making great information resources available about CRISPR. There's a CRISPRpedia, so you can look in the CRISPRpedia at all of the different aspects of CRISPR. There's a nice part of the website that really focuses in on how CRISPR is being used in food and agriculture, as well as more therapeutic applications as well. So that, I think, is one of the best sites for really accessible information about CRISPR in particular.
No, that's a good one. I'll have to check that one out. But we also have CropLife Canada and CropLife International that have great resources. And I'll also
Absolutely.
give Canadian Food Focus a plug that we've have some content and actually have done a webinar on CRISPR as well. So
Fantastic.
mhm. We have a packaging question. Packaging is an ongoing issue due to the use of plastics. Is there anything that you guys are working on there?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things to remember is that, you know, there sometimes we do need to use plastic in order to deliver, good goods to humans. And
Mhm.
what we do know is that, kids are 71% more likely to eat a sliced apple than a whole apple. And they're also sometimes less likely to waste. And so while plastic has its own environmental footprint, so does food waste. And in talking and reading studies by different organizations, including like the World Wildlife Fund, and there's a number of groups that look at food waste in particular, like ReFed, and there's an organization in the UK called Wrapped. What we know is that it's better to get good, healthy, nutritious food like produce into the bellies of kids and other people. And even if it requires plastic as a delivery mechanism, than it is to see a half-eaten apple wasted. And
Mhm.
so, there's always trade-offs. These are never easy, sort of black and white issues. And so the environmental footprint of food waste that is prevented by plastic and produce is actually more of a detriment than putting the produce in plastic. And so while absolutely the produce industry continues to strive to reduce plastic use as well as to find more sustainable alternatives to petroleum-based plastics, it's absolutely a goal of the industry. But it's still, and technologies are still evolving, and we're always looking for new innovations that'll help us deliver our products in more sustainable ways. But plastic does help us reduce food loss and food waste in meaningful ways that does have a very significant positive impact on the environment.
Yeah. No, and I think you're right. That I think there's more innovation on that side all the time, and that might be a great webinar for us to consider exploring too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have some speaker recommendations on that one.
Oh, okay.
But I want to also share that, one of the innovations in like a school cafeteria that I think is really exciting are these share tables. So this
Mm,
is where, like, if you got something on your cafeteria tray that you aren't going to eat, but you don't want to throw it away, you can put it on the share table, and someone else can opt to take that off of the share table and consume it. And one thing that I've learned over the last year or so is that in this share table concept, a product like ours that is in a plastic, bag would be eligible for a share table, whereas a
mm,
product that would not be in a plastic bag would not be eligible for a shared table. And in many cases, even a whole apple wouldn't be eligible to be on the shared table. And so again, it gives the product another chance to be consumed, right? Which is the whole goal, to get people to eat healthy options instead of wasted. So we know you go into school cafeterias and you can see just bins and bins of those half-eaten apples. But if, it's delivered in a small bag, we know kids are 71% more likely to eat it. And even if they don't eat it, they can share it with a friend. They can bring it along with them and eat it later.
No, great options. I'm losing track here. There was a question about our Arctic apples. Are Arctic apple trees available for residential planting?
Not at this time. So again, we are a fully vertically integrated company. So at this time, we grow all of our own trees, and we grow all the Arctic apples. And so it really is a product that consumers can access as a sliced end user product. But we don't sell trees at this time. If we did, you can bet I'd have some in my backyard.
We have another food waste related questions. Is there any use for all the cores that are removed during processing?
Absolutely. We are very committed to ultimately becoming a zero waste company. So we want to use all of the aspects of the apple that we can. And so I talked about one very sort of upcycled aspect of our apples. So the apples that might not be sized appropriately for slicing, like maybe they're larger than the slicers like, or maybe they're a little bit smaller. Those we use for cider, and those are perfectly good, lovely tasting apples. The cores of our apples, we also continue to put back into the food system, often in the form of cattle feed. Some people refer to that as cow chow. So those cows that produce the milk and the beef that people enjoy can be fed on those apples, of course.
No, that's excellent. Great upcycling.
But we're always looking for additional innovative uses for our apples. And so if anybody has any ideas, you can feel free to put them in the chat.
Sounds good. I think we have time for one last question. And Donna Lee has asked, US grown, developed in Canada, US grown, but processed in, I think she's saying California or Canada. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I can kind of talk through where we show up. So we begin with so the headquarters is in Summerland, British Columbia. And that's where our founders, Neil and Louisa, live. And all of the science, so the science begins in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So that's where the Arctic apples are first developed and first grown into small little trees. And then our main production orchards are in Washington State, and our processing facility is also in Washington State.
Are you looking at growing in Canada, or is that something down the line?
We certainly could, in theory. Right now, we're really we're really proud of the fact that all of our orchards are so close to our processing facility, which really limits the need to move the apple around, and it lessens our carbon footprint. So we're pretty committed to that. We would love to find new customers for Arctic apples in Canada, and to ensure that Canadian school kids and Canadian consumers can enjoy the Arctic apple that was developed in Canada. So looking forward to more opportunities to sell apples in Canada.
That's great. Thank you. Well, I think we've come to the end of our time almost. As Sarah mentioned, if you have any other questions, you can reach out through her email or check out her the Arctic Apple website. Or we also have an article on the Canadian Food Focus website by one of our contributors, Myrna Stark-Leader, that tells the Arctic Apple story. As mentioned, we will be posting this webinar on our Canadian Food Forum Facebook group and on the YouTube channel. And before everybody runs off, I do have a couple of quick announcements about some upcoming events that Canadian Food Focus is excited to be participating in. First off, we are excited to be partnering with Taste Canada and Canada Beef and others to present the 2024 Taste Canada Cook the Book Student Cooking Competition. This is where student chef teams from culinary schools across Canada will come to Toronto on Sunday, October 20th, and they will be cooking their hearts out and using Canadian ingredients for the chance to be named Taste Canada's Best New Student Chefs. And Angela is going to post a link about ticket sales in the chat. Also, as part of our involvement in this event, the next day, Monday, October 21st, we'll be hosting a farm tour in conjunction with Canada Beef. And I would like to invite you, any of you that live in the Toronto area on the webinar today to join us and the student chefs for this field to table learning opportunity at the University of Guelph Beef Research Center. Lunch is going to be provided by Roe Beef, and transportation to and from the University of Guelph from Toronto will be provided, or if you live in the area, you can meet us there. There's still a few seats available, and if you're interested, let me know, and we'll get you on the list. And finally, as part of all those experiences, Taste Canada will be holding their awards on that Monday night, October 21st, at the Fairmont Royal York Hotel. Tickets are now available, and the winner of the cooking competition, the student chefs, will be announced that night. And of course, the cookbook awards will be given out. And it's just a great networking event, so hope to see you there. Don't forget to follow us on social media at CDN Food Focus. And if you have any other questions or ideas for articles or webinars, let us know. Finally, thanks again, Sarah, for sharing the Arctic apple story and your knowledge with us. And thanks also to Angela, Penny, and Julie from our team for making this happen, and all of you for joining us today. Thanks. Have a great day.
Dorothy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks again, Sarah.